Was geht ab, meine Freunde, und willkommen zu einer Geschichte von Scorched. Ich bin's, der Gamerjäger, und ich sage mal, wir legen mal los. Heute reagiere ich auf die Geschichte von Scorched. Die wurde nämlich von NeddyTheNoodle gemacht und sie ist ziemlich gut. Da, Scorched. Was ich so herausgefunden habe, ist, in meinem letzten Video hatte mir jemand in die Kommentare geschrieben, warum ich keinen deutschen Untertitel eingebracht habe. Ich habe da schon herumexperimentiert, muss ich euch sagen, aber es ist eigentlich ganz simpel, muss ich sagen. Auch wenn das jetzt ein englisches Video ist. Ich drücke mal auf Stopp, bevor es losgeht. Ich gehe mal auf die Einstellungen, dann gehe ich auf Untertitel, da steht jetzt Englisch automatisch erzeugt. Dann gehe ich jetzt nochmal drauf und dann automatisch übersetzen. Und dann sieht man die ganzen Sprachen. So. Dann möge mal der Wunsch des Users in Erfüllung gehen. So, einmal auf Deutsch. Und ich sage einmal, wir legen los.
I believe that my theory about this island being curated is back in play. In fact, it's possible that the animals themselves are genetically modified.
When I chose that remote northern cave as the site of my spectacular spelunking sojourn, I never imagined that I'd find such wonders within.
How dare they question my honor after all I've done? They have no right!
Only when I have brought this island into a new age shall I be content.
After much deliberation, I've decided to accept Mr. Nerva's offer.
If I want a fair go at actually surviving whatever happens when the obelisk activates, I'll need backup.
In Wutsui's name, I will take his head.
The mysteries of the obelisks are mine to uncover, not Miss Walker's or even Mr. Nerva's. Mine!
Everything I've bled for is gone. For what? For a view?
I don't have the answers to any of these questions or the dozens of others that kept popping into my head, but somehow, I'll find the truth.
Also, diese ganzen deutschen Untertiteln, die sind nicht zu 100%, sage ich euch, falls euch das irgendwie aufgefallen ist. Weil Nerva heißt nicht Nervos oder so, aber das könnt ihr ruhig, glaube ich, ignorieren. Weil das ist ein bisschen schon eben halt, sagen wir mal, die schlechte AI-Übersetzung.
Even at this distance, the great obelisk is beautiful. It is like a pillar of Amun-Ra's light given solid form. I wish we could have made our camp right beside it, but the others thought that might draw unwanted attention. At least we are close enough to be in its shadow and drink from the river that runs beneath it. I always face it when I pray to Hathor. And though I can feel the skepticism in my companions' gazes, my faith is unshaken. For it was my faith that guided us here, to this place, rich with water and resources. All agree that it is the ideal location for a settlement. Wherever we are, the gods are watching over us. I know it. Construct.
Das ist übrigens Raya. Das ist eine ägyptische Priesterin aus dem ägyptischen Zeitalter der Pharaonen und Kleopatras, oder ich weiß auch nicht. Wenn ihr mehr wisst, dann schreibt mir das bitte in den Kommentaren. Aber jedenfalls ist sie eine ägyptische Priesterin.
Action has been going well. None of us are architects, but we have been adjusting to our roles. Girisha's broad shoulders and booming laugh conceal a keen mind, and we started making better progress once I convinced him to stop hauling rocks and start drawing up plans. That let Amir focus on starting a garden, where he is more at home. I have focused on trying to keep us organized and maintaining our spirits myself. I wish I could do more. Sadly, while a priestess has many gifts, manual labor is not one of them. I often find myself winded before midday. I pray that the others do not find me burdensome. Back in Luxor, I always tried to stay out of politics. I never aspired to be divine adoratrice, as some priestesses did. I found that such selfish ambitions often led to suffering, both for oneself and for others. So when Girisha referred to me as our leader today, I found myself surprised. I had never asked for such a position, and the others have never bestowed it on me in any official manner. It just happened naturally. I am not sure what to make of it, but if this is Hathor's will, then I will try to guide these people as best as I can. Our settlement has grown so quickly during these hectic months. So many wandering souls have found their way here, seeking shelter and companionship. I have done my best to welcome everyone I can. If treated with understanding, most become productive, loyal members of our community. But I am no fool. I know that hearts can have two natures. Hathor offers compassion, while Sekhmet brings devastation. As we grow in size, we become a riper target for those with malice in their hearts. Girisha has tried to organize a militia, but I fear it is inadequate. For now, I must be wary and pray that the gods send us a true warrior.
Typisch Priester. Immer der Gewalt aus dem Weg gehen, aber beten alleine hilft nicht in so einer gefährlichen Welt. Man muss sich schon zu verteidigen wissen.
Old habits die hard. I suppose I'm living proof. I woke up stark naked, who knows where, with who knows what lodged in my arm. Just weeks later, and I'm already back to robbing folks at gunpoint. This place may not be Texas or the Arizona territory, but I'm the same John Dakea. I don't know why that makes me restless. I didn't mind this life before, but then I didn't exactly choose it. I just stumbled into it, or at least that's what I told myself. So much for that. Maybe this is just who I am. Sometimes the pennies a man won't part with willingly are worth less than the words he'll share with any stranger. Some of my new partners don't see that. Blondie's particularly blind to it. He's always looking for an excuse to pull the trigger, and he's stubborn as hell. He even still gets mad we call him Blondie, as if any of us can pronounce that name of his. But if Blondie were calling the shots, that hunter wouldn't have told us about the group gathering to the southeast. And they'll have a lot more for the taking than animal hides. I can't believe...
Das ist übrigens John Takea, ein aus den wilden Westen, ein indianischer Outlaw, also ein Gesetzloser, der sich auch fragt, wie er hierher gekommen ist.
Believe how easy this was. There weren't many guards to begin with, and the few they've got are more likely to shoot you a smile than a bullet. We just walked right in. The settlement is even bigger than we expected. It's impressive, protection aside. Everyone working together to build their own little paradise. Not that it'll last. If you ask them, they'll credit their leader, a woman called Raya. The others have spread out to find where supplies are stored, but I'm feeling curious. Maybe I'll go find this mystery woman. Might be interesting. I don't know what brought me to this desert. My old man would say it was the spirits of our ancestors. Other folks might say God. Whatever it was, after talking to that woman, I realize now that I've been wasting what it's given me. I have no history here. There are no posters showing off my sneering face, no posses hunting me. I can be any man I choose. So today, I'm making a choice. The folks here don't deserve to be robbed. What they deserve is protection. And I'm the man to protect them. Hell, maybe they'll even call me Sheriff.
Plötzlich von Outlaw zum Sheriff, was? Ja, in einer anderen Welt ist das ziemlich einfach, wenn man in eine andere Welt kommt. Easy Kai.
It took longer than I had hoped, but the gods have heard my prayers. At least, I believe so. When I imagined what a true warrior might be like, I cannot say that I imagined Captain Dakeya. He speaks tersely, has no sense of decorum, and in general is rather prickly. He was nigh unapproachable for the whole day when we decided his position should be called captain instead of the nonsense word he proposed. Yet he has been getting results, or so I am told. When I find time, I ought to observe him in action myself.
Blondie didn't approve of my decision. I've never been very good at persuasion, so I let my pistol make my case.
Der hat gesessen. Wenn der nicht gesessen hat, dann hat er nicht gesessen. Aber der hat ordentlich gesessen.
The others saw it my way after that. Convincing Raya was a lot less trouble. She knew the settlement's guards weren't exactly the cream of the crop, and that if I'd wanted trouble, I'd have already made it. When Raya talks, people listen. I can tell that much from watching her. But in a lawless place like this, words aren't enough. It didn't take long for us to come to terms. Well, I suppose I'd better inspect the troops. Maybe a few of them can shoot. Now I know how the old man felt while he was teaching me how to hunt. We stopped seeing eye to eye even before I left the tribe. But I'll always thank him for the time he spent telling me the same damn things over and over again. Must have drove him wild inside, but he never showed it. Hasn't been easy to imitate that patience. Half of this sorry bunch is green as grass, and the half that isn't.
Eins ist klar, man sollte nicht mit einer Waffe so herumfuchteln, weil sonst könnte der Schuss nach hinten losgehen.
I'd rather hold a spear than a gun. At least they're improving.
Mit einem Speer am Schießstand. Ja.
Even if it's at the speed of molasses. Her Highness stops by on occasion, but thankfully it's just for a gander. This would be even harder with distractions.
I am still not accustomed to the loud, fiery weapons that our new captain is training his men to use. Their power is so destructive that it seems almost too much for any mortal man to possess. Yet Captain Dakeya strolls up and down his line of trainees like they are wielding wooden swords, and twirls his own weapon almost absent-mindedly. It is somewhat unnerving to find someone so calm around such instruments of death. But I suppose that is why he has had such success in securing our borders. I can only hope that we need but one Captain Dakeya, and that I never have to use those weapons myself.
Und wie du die Waffen benutzen wirst.
It has been such a blessing to be able to spread Hathor's joy and love to so many people. At first, my daily prayers garnered but a few curious observers. Yet soon, observations turned to questions, and questions turned to participation. Now there are so many of us that we have even begun to construct a shrine. I truly wish that I could teach these eager new students all day long, but my duty to the village must come first. Perhaps when our future here is finally secure, I shall be able to live the life of a priestess again. But for now, I have too many people counting on me. I cannot abandon them.
My patchwork posse had their first real test today. Some of our gatherers ran into those big lizards a few miles west of the village, and one of them managed to come call for help. Luckily, the others had tucked themselves away in an outcropping, and we got everyone back safe and sound. Well, except for the Frenchman. He forgot that when you shoot at those big bastards, they'll shoot right back. Took them hours to get those barbs out of his arm.
Ich hätte auch gern so viele Leute in meinem Trupp.
When we got back, I think I heard the words "thank you" more than any other day in my life. I didn't really know what to say in return. The townsfolk may be grateful for my protection, but that doesn't mean they like me. I don't mind. If they're looking for social graces, they ought to find Her Highness. Raya hates that nickname. She thinks I'm calling her stuck up, and I suppose I am. Just a little. Can't imagine that woman's hands ever saw a callus before she got here. That's not the whole of it, though. Take this business with that tower. She's got folks from all sorts of places praying to the damn thing. She never really asked them to. They just want to follow her lead. It's like she's wearing an invisible crown. Can't decide whether that's comforting or concerning.
Names are a curious thing. We assign them great weight, yet they do not change the substance of the person, place, or thing they belong to. I suppose that line of thinking is why I never dwelled on the name of our humble village. Yet now that it has grown to become somewhat less humble, our home can go nameless no longer. People must call it something. To that end, Nosti is as good a name as any. I am told that it means to know in some old important language. And whatever our citizens intended that to symbolize when they chose it, I know this. While we are
Das musst du erst einmal alles organisieren, dass du sowas machen kannst eigentlich. Das ist schon arg, nicht wahr? Das ist schon arg. Sorry. Irgendwie schon ziemlich arg, wenn du sowas machen musst. Also NeddyTheNoodle muss ziemlich viele Connections haben, damit er so ein Werk vollbringen kann überhaupt. Okay, dann will ich nicht weiter.
here, we are under the protection of the gods.
Weil erklären muss ich ja nicht, um was es hier geht. Dank der Untertitel.
Lost souls from all across the desert continue to prostrate themselves before Nosti's gates. I adamantly refuse to turn away anyone that does not mean us any harm. But I realize that has left us with many mouths to feed. As a result, Nosti's fields are its most valuable asset. Fortunately, Girisha's designs and my organization of labor and resources have once again proven effective. Not only did we implement an efficient irrigation system, but we have encased our crops in a large protective structure made of a clear, shiny substance called glass. Every morning, it sparkles with Amun-Ra's light like a great gem, a beautiful reminder of what we can accomplish when we are united in purpose.
Irgendwie habt ihr was bei der Übersetzung gemerkt? Fitnessstudio. Woher weiß eine Ägypterin von der ägyptischen Zeit, was ein Fitnessstudio ist?
My band of misfit lawmen may finally be coming together. It's been a whole week since someone shot themselves in the leg or pissed their britches over a raptor. Maybe I'll finally be able to get some decent shut-eye. Probably too much to hope for. Every day, Nosti grows a little bigger, and I have a few more problems to solve. Those giant bugs from the other day, for example. Found 2 of them playing around with a pickaxe a few miles north of the river. I've never heard of any animal using tools. Not outside of the legends the elders used to tell me about Big Owl and Coyote. It doesn't seem natural. Something damaged the water pipe outside of town yesterday. When a crew went to repair it, they were attacked by a whole mess of mantises. My boys and I drove them off, but we were too late to save the engineers. I know it sounds crazy, but I think those mantises cut through that pipe on purpose to draw us out. If I'm right.
Stellt euch vor, wenn es wirklich in Ark Gegner geben würde, die wirklich so intelligent sind, dass sie versuchen können, euch zu sabotieren. Ich rede jetzt nicht von Spielern oder so, sondern wirklich von so Computergegnern, also KIs. Anscheinend soll es eigentlich bei Ark 2 sowas geben, was ich so gehört habe.
I'm more concerned about them than anything. The stories about Big Owl and Coyote. Big Owl was the huge, scary one. Coyote was more dangerous because he was clever. He'd trick man and monster alike, and everyone feared it. I never believed those stories, but I sure remember the lesson.
Despite our best efforts and the blessing of the gods, tragedy is unavoidable in these strange lands. Yesterday, it struck Nasty once more in the form of a mantis attack. And while I could not undo what had been done, I hope that I was able to bring some small comfort to those who knew the victims best. Though we lack resources to properly enter the dead in tombs, we still held a ceremony in their memory, and I made time to speak privately with anyone who wished to. Between that and my usual duties, I am physically and emotionally exhausted. But when my people are suffering, I cannot afford to rest.
I was worried that Raya would fight some of the new precautions my boys have been taking, but I guess I've earned a looser leash. I suppose I ought to lay off the highness talk then. Seems only fair. The other day, we even shot the breeze a little. First time we've talked about something besides what needs doing. Seems we're both a little worn out. Unlike me, she's used to being respectable and responsible. Being in charge means everyone wants your time and attention. This place hasn't been easy on either of us or anyone else. I'm still kicking so far. Come what may, I don't plan on stopping.
Early on, I handled all of Nasty's trade negotiations, and I have had trouble growing out of that habit. I suppose that is why every caravan or hunter that passes through our gates knows my name. Some still insist on speaking with me personally, but I do not mind. I find these dealings rather engaging. It is like playing a game of words. One such caravan arrived yesterday, bearing a haul of metal ingots. Our venerable captain has suggested that I bring a contingent of guards to the negotiations, but I would rather not. If our guests are intimidated, they may back out, and I would be remiss to waste such an opportunity.
Something like this was bound to happen one day. The bigger the town gets, the more value Raya has to it. And what happens to valuable things? People try to steal them. It wasn't a bad idea, holding her for ransom like that. Too bad for those raiders that this is my town. I picked most of them off with a rifle as they tried to force her onto a pack animal. And my men finished a few others as they fled. One tried surrendering, but I had to send a message. If you pull a stunt like that in my goddamn town, you won't get any mercy. Not a single shred of it.
Ja, so ist es mal halt so in einer postapokalyptischen Welt oder in einer rauen Gegend. Ja, das gibt es auch leider in unserer Welt. Wenn jemanden anderen ans Bein anpisst, tja, Peng.
I shall gladly admit that I erred. I shall even admit that I owe Captain Dakeya my life and offer him all the gratitude he is due. Yet that does not excuse such merciless behavior. Those so-called merchants may have stooped to viciousness and cruelty by trying to kidnap me, but that one had surrendered. There was no need to execute him on the spot, was there? It is so hard to see where light ends and darkness begins in this violent place. Perhaps if I could adequately protect myself, we could have avoided needless bloodshed. Yes, I think it is time. I shall master these explosive weapons, and Captain Dakeya is going to help me.
Und das ist jetzt der Moment, wo man jetzt realisiert, dass man sich selbst verteidigen muss und nicht immer nur dauernd beten muss in so einer rauen Welt.
That woman's got some nerve. I save her hide, and the next day, Raya's scolding me for putting down a defenseless kidnapper. Hardly even thanked me first. What does she expect me to do? Give him free room and board for the rest of his days? Let him go so he can tell every bandit in the desert how soft we are? I told her that if she didn't like the way I protected her, then she can protect herself. Should have kept my damn mouth shut. Now I'm stuck teaching her how to shoot 3 times a week. I'll be at it forever, too. She couldn't hit a bison's ass from 5 paces. I do believe that my pupil is the first dead-eye Egyptian priestess the world's ever seen.
Aber wer kennt das nicht? Man rettet jemandem das Leben und was bekommt man zum Dank? Entweder Beleidigungen oder Beschimpfungen. Meistens.
A few months. Raya's just too stubborn to quit. I shouldn't have been so hard on her. Trying to keep your faith and traditions in a dog-eat-dog world isn't easy. Hell, I couldn't even do it myself. And that was before giant lizards were looking to take a bite out of my backside. During one lesson, she told me this story about how her goddess had a nice side and a nasty one. I think she meant something else. The way I see it, we're the goddess. She's nice, I'm nasty. We keep each other in check.
Tja, Gegensätze ziehen sich eben an. Wenn man aber so bedenkt, ich als Gamer müsste jetzt eigentlich eine hübsche Lehrerin kennenlernen. Ihr wisst ja, Gegensätze ziehen sich ja an. Naja, die Realität sieht mal halt anders aus.
Step by step, I am learning how to shoot. During my first few lessons, the weapons almost jumped out of my hand when I fired them. But my arms have grown stronger and my aim truer. Captain Dakeya's presence has been helpful. The same calm that I found unnerving from afar has been steadying from up close. He does not waste his breath on exaggerated praise or criticism. He simply keeps me focused on what I need to do, and everything else just falls away. Considering where I started, he has been very patient with me. Perhaps I should be more patient with him. In ancient times, gentle Hathor took the form of the fierce warrior goddess Sekhmet and unleashed her wrath upon the human world. Yet even during her relentless slaughter, Hathor was within Sekhmet, as Sekhmet was always within Hathor. And when she was eventually calmed, the peaceful goddess of joy and love returned. As it is with the goddess, so it is with mankind. The vicious can become kind and the kind-hearted can become violent. For all his past transgressions, Captain Dakeya is no different. He did not grasp Hathor and Sekhmet's tail when I told it to him the other day. But if he keeps trying to better himself, then perhaps one day he will. In principle, I have turned into a competent marksman. Yet in practice, how would I fare? When the time comes, could I end another human life? I am not so sure. My mouth grows dry with fear at the very thought. The warrior spirit of Sekhmet surely resides somewhere within the recesses of my heart, but search as I may, I cannot find it. As training, I offered to put down some of our beasts that had grown deathly ill. It was a merciful act, but it still drew tears from my eyes and twisted my stomach into knots. I must learn to act in spite of these feelings. My life may depend on it one day.
Tja, das ist etwas ganz anderes als wie am Schießstand. Wenn man etwas Lebendes auf etwas Lebendes schießt, ist plötzlich das Gefühl anders.
Despite my best efforts, I know that I have strayed from the teachings and customs that I learned so meticulously back home. Out of necessity, I have adapted it to both the needs of Hathor's new followers and the circumstances we all face in this desert. For example, celebrating the gods with feasts and festivals in their name would be wasteful. This sacrifice is particularly unfortunate, for my students deserve some sort of reward for their diligence. Perhaps I can still organize a modest celebration of some sort. In fact, maybe the whole village should have one, just to raise everyone's spirits. Even our venerable captain might enjoy that. But I ask for miracles.
Even after all this time in Nasti, I have trouble sleeping in the same bed every night. Sometimes I'll just toss and turn until I give up and go to sleep beneath the stars. Hell, I'm not sure we ever slept in the same spot twice back in the Russo gang. Thought I'd live that way forever, wild and free like Doc Russo. Probably die guns blazing like him too. Sounded better to me than withering away with the rest of my tribe as the world passed us by. I don't think Doc would recognize me now. I'm not the Apache nephew he taught to read and shoot. Matter of fact, if he were here, I'd probably have to shoot him. I expected those mantises to come back. Not like this. They came at the village from two sides at the same time. The way they moved, they were more coordinated than any wolf pack. They worked together like men would. It took nearly half a day to fend them off. They didn't leave us without scars. If attacks like this become common, we're gonna be in a heap of trouble. So I've decided to round up my best men to track these critters down. We've got to at least find out where they're coming from.
Dann sollte man seine Basis nicht aus Stein und Lehm bauen. Ich baue zum Beispiel meine Basis entweder aus Metall oder aus Tech. Dann muss ich mir solche Probleme, da spare ich mir solche Probleme, dass irgendein Tier das kaputt macht.
I trust our captain's judgment on matters of defense, but I still feel ill at ease with his decision to sally against these mantises. It is not that he has left the village unprotected. Quite the contrary. I fear that his own contingent is too small. I know that I should not be concerned. He personally vouched for the caliber of his team, and I have more immediate priorities. Our walls and gates need repairs, our infirmary needs supplies, and our morale needs bolstering. I have been scrambling to and fro with such constant urgency that rings have formed beneath my eyes. Yet when I finally earn a moment's respite, I am restless with worry. The people of Nasti come from so many different places, and they all have different ways of thinking. On occasion, this incites conflict. Several weeks ago, two newcomers came to blows over a long-standing feud between their home nations. And just the other day, I had to harshly discipline one of my own disciples for harassing the villagers who worship that wooden cross. One time, a man even challenged me to a duel for Nasti's leadership. Yet those same two people who engaged in fisticuffs now work to repair our western gate, and it is stronger for their combined efforts. Perhaps that is why the gods have brought us all here, to help us understand each other.
Wer kennt das nicht? Eine Fehde. Ich sage nur im Osten. Russland und die Ukraine.
We've been tracking these damn things for ages. I can't believe they traveled so far just to attack us. Something like that has to be deliberate. I already knew these bugs were smart, but if they're that determined to kill us, then we've got to wipe them out here and now. That's easier said than done. There's a whole mess of them here. Can't say I've heard of any Manises living in a group like this, but I'm no expert when it comes to animals. Certainly not in this crazy place. At any rate, I've got to come up with some kind of plan. Shooting them one by one won't do the trick. I'm glad I decided to take Sasha with me. The Russian showed up in Nasty less than a month ago. She already knew her way around a gun. Says she learned it in a place called Gru. Never heard of it, but apparently they teach you all sorts of tricks there. Like how to make bombs more powerful than dynamite. The caves the mantises are holed up in are filled with sulfur. So if we set Sasha's bombs in the right spot, we should be able to wipe them all out at once. Provided we can shoot our way in and out without becoming mantis chow. Well, Captain, time to earn your title. I can't recall the journey back to town, but I remember the caverns. Mantises didn't take too kindly to our intrusion. Took half my men with them before we blew them to hell. Well, most of them.
Oh
They
yeah.
came at us while we were celebrating. I pushed Sasha out of the way like a damn fool. Nearly got myself skewered. That rise got me all cooped up until I finished recovering. Threatened to tie me to the bed if I tried to leave. I'd probably drive myself nuts if she didn't keep me company so often. She was even here when I first woke up. I admit, I was glad to see the sight.
For days I have prayed for both Hathor's compassion and Sekhmet's healing powers. And for days I have waited. I have faith that they heard me. When I first laid eyes on him, I thought for sure he was dead or dying. But the gods have not yet taken John Dakeya away from me. My mind knows that I have other responsibilities to attend to. That I cannot afford to spend more time in this room. Yet I know that if I attempt to attend to my duties, my heart will interfere. And I cannot neglect it. Not any longer.
How long have I wanted this?
Ich frage mich nur, wie viel Narkosemittel sie ihn reinhauen mussten, um ihn daher zu schleppen. Das ist ziemlich gut inszeniert, muss man sagen.
Can't place it exactly. Feels like I always have. I suppose that's how I know it's right. It's not just that Raya's beautiful. I've known beautiful women before. But I never got the same feeling when I looked at them. I never felt this at home around them, or anyone for that matter. What happened between us when I was stuck in that room wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. At least I don't think. All I know is that now, I don't mind sleeping in the same bed every night. Not anymore.
Without question, it was Hathor's divine will that sent me here. Not only so I could spread her joy and compassion, but so I could understand her love. I know that I knew it before. I loved my family, I loved my fellow priestesses, and I love all those under my care here in Nasty. Yet only when I surrendered myself to it. When I let it rush over my body and carry me like the current of a great river, did I truly understand it. Only now can I claim to embody Hathor's teachings. Thanks to John Dakeya, this warrior from a distant time and place. And now together, we can turn this desert into a paradise. The mood in Nasty has been so jubilant lately that I think we may just hold a festival after all. And why not? We have plenty of cause to celebrate. With the mantis threat diminished, our scouts were able to establish an outpost in the north, where they discovered a wealth of thick black oil seeping through the cracks in the earth. Thanks to this bounty, we have been able to create amazing new tools and fill our storehouses to the brim. A festival would hardly make a dent. I am sure my beloved captain will disagree. Ever the dutiful warrior. Fortunately, I can be quite convincing where John Dakea is concerned. And for one day, we deserve to supplant worry and duty with song and dance.
Maybe I should change my name again. Seems fitting. I started calling myself John about a week after joining up with Doc Russo. The others never called me Dakea anyway, so I figured they may as well call me by a name I chose myself. That was part of it, but I think that deep down, I also knew that the boy who earned the name Dakea was gone for good. Now I think the outlaw named John Dakea is gone too, so it would make sense to call myself something else. Then again, that may just confuse folks. Probably not worth the hassle. Besides, I kinda like the way it sounds with an Egyptian accent.
As I watched Girisha's team construct the curious bladed tower that is meant to harness the power of Shu's winds, I could not help but marvel at how far we have come. In such a short time, Nasti has risen from nothing into a true city, with wonders that would make even the great pharaohs envious. For all its storms and monsters, this desert grows less threatening to us each day, and fewer people are forced to suffer and die by its hand. Perhaps one day, no one will. If we can achieve that, then every hardship and every sacrifice we have endured will have been worth it.
Jetzt fehlt nur noch Tech, dann wären wir... Jetzt fehlt nur noch Tech und dann wären wir bei Star Trek.
Things have been quiet for a while now. Downright pleasant, even. At least that was the case until one of our hunting parties went missing about 5 days ago. Well, they're not missing anymore. At least what's left of them. We scoured every inch of their camp and still can't figure out who attacked them. There aren't many prints from animals. The ones we found aren't like any creature I've seen. There's scorch marks aplenty, though. Maybe it was a group of raiders, some of those new flame-spewing weapons that I've heard tell about. Whoever it was, I'll see to it that they live just long enough to regret it. Finally tracked down our culprit this morning. Damn, he was one big, mean son of a gun. He had wings like a bat, a head of lizard, and spat fire from his mouth. I've never seen anything like it, not even here. Fortunately, anything will die if you put enough bullets in its head. One of my men called it a wyvern, but he'd never actually seen one before. Said it was just a legend. No one in town had spotted one either. So where'd it come from? Did it just suddenly fly here from parts unknown? This whole affair doesn't sit right with me. Gives me a bad feeling.
Tja, wie sagt man so schön? Wenn es blutet, kann man es töten. Das gilt auch für Drachen. Oder Wövern.
Folks have been spotting a lot more of these wyvern creatures. They're not just throwing fire every which way either. Some spit lightning or acid. On top of that, those big pillars are acting funny. I checked with Sasha since she doesn't buy into that Hathor business, but she sees it too. It's making me restless. Between this and the mantises, it's starting to feel like this place wants us gone. I know that can't be right. There were no spirits of the land to stop the frontiersmen back home, and there are none here. Still, I should talk to Rye. That tower's dangerous. She shouldn't be worshipping it.
Over the last few days, the lights of the great obelisks have been pulsing with a rhythm and intensity that I have never seen before. It is a beautiful, soothing sight, particularly at night. It almost looks like they are singing a song to the stars above. Surely this is a sign of the gods' favor. Hathor is offering us her blessing. Having another festival would be exorbitant. So I have organized a special round of ceremonies and prayers after dusk instead. Thus far, they have gone wonderfully, and everyone has left with renewed faith and vigor. I wonder how long this display will last. Sometimes I wonder how Jean can carry on with no faith in a higher purpose or power, and eyes that see threats everywhere. Even when we are safe and secure, he insists on sleeping with a weapon at arm's length. It is no wonder that he suddenly believes the obelisks could be dangerous. Fortunately, I have enough faith for the both of us. I have faith that he will protect us from the flying lizards that have recently appeared. I have faith that the obelisks would never harm us. And I even have faith that I shall forgive his constant prodding on the latter. That final matter might require some additional effort on his part, however. He has been simply relentless about it.
I shouldn't have expected her to listen. Raya's kept her faith this long, so there was no way a few wyverns and a talking to were gonna change that. Even if that talking to came from me. Still, I'm not about to take any chances. Whether it's wyverns, mantises, or giant towers, nothing's harming this town. It's especially not harming her. Her prayer groups are getting extra guards, and I don't care if she likes it. I expect she won't. In fact, I'll probably have to sleep under the stars for the next few nights. Oh well. I suppose that's what you'd call a long-term investment. For all my caution, I could have never prepared for this. Yesterday, the towers started flashing and glowing like a damn lightning storm. And I saw that. I saddled up one of our cats and went to find Raya as fast as I could. Within minutes, the ground was crumbling beneath us, like the land was trying to swallow Nasty whole.
Oh. Jetzt wird's ernst.
Once I swung Raya up on the saddle, I had to ride like a man possessed, our cat leaping across broken buildings as they slipped into the ground. Even then, we barely made it. We're the only ones. I spotted Sasha hanging onto a ledge as we escaped. I couldn't get to her in time. We're all that's left.
Oh Mann, da musste man wirklich, zuerst muss man sich vorstellen, die haben das alles so gut erbaut, um nur für diesen Moment die ganze Stadt abreißen zu lassen, damit es so richtig ausschaut, als würde die Stadt den Untergang geweiht sein. Ja, ziemlich cool, muss ich sagen. Echt klasse.
What did I do wrong? Despite every trial and tribulation, I kept my faith in Hathor, Amun-Ra, and all the gods. No, I did more than that. I gave them new followers. I built shrines for them and held ceremonies for them. So why? Why did the obelisks light up the sky and call down such a terrible doom upon my new home? Why would the gods tear the very earth asunder and send all that I have built and cherished tumbling into the abyss? Where did I betray them? Were it not for John, I would not even be able to ask such questions. I would just be some dead fool whose last act would have been to beg for salvation from the very gods who have forsaken me.
Tja, abergläubische Leute oder zu streng gläubige Leute müssen erst einmal fühlen, um zu realisieren, dass der andere recht hatte anscheinend.
My mind is filled with the dead. I see the smiling faces of my students, eager to learn. I hear Girisha's laugh, deep and merry. I see the outstretched hand of John's trusted lieutenant as she fell into the darkness below. Jean tells me not to blame myself. that what happened was unpredictable. Yet how can I not feel guilty when I led so many to worship the instruments of our destruction, all the while promising to keep them safe? Somehow, I must bury these emotions and focus on the present, as John does. If I cannot tear my mind away from what I have lost, I will lose all I have left. I cannot let that happen. I cannot let the gods take him too.
I wish I were better with words. I just don't know what to tell Rye after all that's happened. A loss like this is always going to ache, but nothing I do or say seems to ease the hurt at all. I know things are ugly.
Raya heißt Roggen. Roggen, falls ihr das gesehen habt.
When I'm the optimistic one. For now, just gotta keep us focused on staying alive, step by step. We're going back to the basics. Finding water, finding food, finding shelter. This snaggletooth cat and I are all she's got left. That means I've got to be steady for her. Somehow, we'll make it through this. So far, so good. The cat has helped keep the critters away, so I've conserved ammunition. We're all stocked up on supplies. For the immediate future, I'd say we're safe and secure. Further than immediate, though, I'm not so sure. Neither of us are builders. There are bigger, tougher animals than long-toothed cats out there. Eventually, we'll need to find some new friends. Asti was the biggest settlement in the desert. It couldn't have been the only one. I heard rumors that a hunting party had seen some buildings to the west. Sounds like as good a place to start as any. Damn it all to hell! I had everything under control. We were gonna make it, but I just had to go searching for that town. A stupid, boneheaded decision. It's not that the rumor was wrong. There are buildings, all right. Crumbling, abandoned buildings that are half buried in the sand, and hope to a group of damned wyverns that attacked us on the way in. We managed to give them the slip by taking shelter in this big circular building. They've been circling it ever since. Got enough supplies for nearly a week. Hopefully they'll lose interest before we start to run dry. The wyverns haven't left. They're fixated on us. Well, if they want me so bad, they'll get it. I'm not foolhardy enough to fight them on my own, but I can at least insist that Raya take our mount. If things go south, she'll have a chance to run. Raya, if that happens and you're reading this, don't go crying on my account. The time we've had is more than I could have hoped for. Besides, it'd be downright selfish of me to keep you to myself. You've got so much to offer the world. As for me, I've only got one true talent. And those ugly, overgrown lizards find out just what that is when I drag them to hell. Yours always, John.
Well, come on then! Come at me! Let's go! Come on! I'm right here! You want me? Come and get me!
You would have been proud of me. I controlled my breathing just like you taught me, even with the tears streaming down my face. Even with all the hate and anger in my heart, I kept my aim steady and I killed them. I killed them all, John. So why have you abandoned me too? You were the survivor, not I. These creatures should not have been enough to kill you. You were too strong. I need you too much. Please, come back to me. I need to hear your voice. I need to see your smile. Please. Please.
Eins muss man ihn lassen. Er starb als Held, nicht als Gesetzloser. Ja, das ist sehr, sehr, naja, wie nennt man das? Sehr schicksalshaft. Also quasi, wenn man einst ein Krimineller war und dann plötzlich als Held gefeiert wird. Ruhe in Frieden, John. Ruhe in Frieden, John.
When I found them, I wanted to smash them to bits. Those eggs were the spawns of the monsters that slew my beloved, and they did not deserve my pity. Yet I also knew they could help me. If I could raise these creatures as my own servants, then even those traitorous gods of mine could not strike me down. I have constructed a great bonfire to mimic the warmth provided by their mother, and gathered milk from the mightiest of the fallen beasts, so that I may feed them when they hatch. Hopefully it is enough. No, it will be. I will raise these creatures. I will master them, and I will survive. I promise you, John. I will live for both of us.
Feuer mit Feuer
When the
bekämpfen.
creatures first hatched, I dared not go near them without weapon in hand. But by now, we have grown accustomed to each other. I once heard that a newborn creature may identify the first living thing it sees as its parent. I believe that has occurred here. I have become a mother to monsters. So be it. The gods have forsaken me, and my love has been taken from me. So gone now is the Raya of old. Gone are the last vestiges of Hathor's joy and tranquility. Let my heart fill with Sekhmet's might and fury, and with monsters at my back and steel in my hands. Let the desert know my wrath. Never shall anyone take from me again, be it God, beast, or man.
In all my life, I have never seen so magnificent a sight.
It was her who freed me and insisted we follow Nerva through the portal in the cave.
The exquisite metal this place is made out of, not to mention that bizarre creature.
The ecosystem on the island was completely artificial from the ground up.
I'm sure a scientist of my caliber could get something out of them with a little educated fiddling.
How could they have possibly kept it hidden from the world? I don't have the answers to any of these questions or the dozens of others that kept popping into my head. But somehow, I mean to find out. Somehow, I'll find the truth.
Confound those confusing contraptions. Despite my best efforts, I could make neither heads nor tails of the consoles I found in that starlit sanctuary. If only I still had that jittery, bespectacled assistant of mine from all those years ago. What was his name? Gerald? Gerard? The one that loved tinkering with the devices we'd salvaged from the arms of the island's less fortunate inhabitants. Good lad. The inscriptions he found on the inside of those little trinkets were where I first saw the word Ark, as I recall. Shame about the incident with the Compsognathus. If I still had his services, perhaps I'd never be in this god-forsaken desert. Ah well. Stiff upper lip, Rockwell. Make the best of it.
Das ist übrigens Rockwell, aber das wisst ihr ja schon bereits. Übrigens, Ich kann ihn noch immer noch nicht leiden.
Right then. Now that I've found a shady spot where I can enjoy a brief respite from this desert's dreadful heat, it's high time that I set some goals for this expedition. If I wander about aimlessly, then I'm sure to meet the same fate as poor Gerald. First, I shall find a local tribe, if for no other reason than to obtain a proper mount and supplies. Second, I simply must learn more about the strange metal that lines the walls of the sanctuary. Even with a cursory study, I could tell that it possesses wondrous properties. But where could I find more of it? I must say, nothing reminds a man of his own mortality quite like a desolate wasteland. As a strapping young lad, I could have survived alone in this desert for years. While on one occasion, I fought off a Bengal tiger with naught but an empty flask and my favourite pipe. With this makeshift spear, the beasts of this land would never have a prayer. Yet, in my old age, I can feel this damnable sun sapping my strength with every minute I spend under its unforgiving gaze. Each day, I cover less ground than the day before. I must find civilization soon, no matter how primitive. Without the right tools and supplies, I fear that this expedition will be incredibly short-lived.
Tja, Rockwell, du hast ja eben halt Erfahrung gesammelt von der Island, wie man mit primitiven Stämmen kommuniziert.
I had to pick the desert. Why the hell did I pick the desert? Well, I suppose pick is a rather strong word for it. I'm still not entirely certain just how I got that console working, but it suddenly started cycling through holographic images of different space stations similar to the island one that I'd been living on. Of course, I just had to go and press another button while it was showing off one that contained miles and miles of bloody desert, and here I am. That's just typical of me, isn't it? Always leaping, never looking. Oh well, better make the best of it. And by that, I mean, better not die of heat exhaustion.
Tja, und plötzlich hat die Teleportation Helen einen Haarschnitt verpasst. Ja.
My hunting skills are seriously
Also übrigens, das ist Helena, aber das wisst ihr ja schon bereits.
out of practice. Not that I was ever spectacular, but I feel like I'd graduated from smashing bugs with a rock at some point. At least I was thoroughly rewarded for my efforts. My hunch was spot on. These big green bastards are carrying drinkable water on their backs. And thank goodness for that. I may have never known if I'd killed a red one first, since those carry oil instead. Far less useful when you're dying of thirst, let me tell you. I may be fighting the inevitable though. I'm still on foot, and still alone. Definitely miss Athena. I'm on a roll. By sheer coincidence, I stumbled into another group of survivors today, and they didn't try to kill me or anything. If I didn't know how probability actually worked, I'd say this recent string of good luck is the universe making up for sending me to the bloody desert in the first place. The caravanners were welcoming, and the creatures they ride are fascinating. They seem like dinosaurs, but they also appear to share some biology with camels. Bizarre. For all its oddities, the island never had anything like that. I'll have to study them. After a nap. All this desert survival's left me knackered. If I'd ended up on this station instead of that island, I'd have never imagined the ecosystem was natural. Not for 2 seconds. Take these morellatops. They're a cross between a ceratops, a morellodon, and a camel. And the strangest part? There are places in its humps where you can stick a spigot and get clean drinking water. Tastes like piss, but not only is it safe, it doesn't even harm the morellatops. It's crackers! Definitely the result of genetic engineering, but I knew that, didn't I? It's time to get to the why. Maybe studying the creatures here with my new perspective will yield some insight. Today, I caught a glimpse of what the caravanners call the Endless Dunes, the desolate sea of sand that apparently surrounds the livable portion of the desert on all sides. Surely these dunes must end, but it's easy to see why one might believe otherwise. Not only do they stretch onto the horizon, which I now know must actually be some kind of holographic projection, but they're home to, get this, giant sandworms that will devour anything that sets foot in their domain. I laughed that off at first. Then I saw a creature the size of a train burst forth from the sand and devour a wild morellatops that had wandered into its territory. I suppose I'll just have to learn to walk without rhythm. As absurd as the deathworms are, I see their purpose. They are a natural barrier. If this whole place is a space station posing as a real ecosystem, then it needs to keep the wildlife and humans inside it contained in a way that appears natural. The island accomplished that by simply being an island, and the desert does it via the deathworms. Granted, a large population of predators with ludicrous kilocalorie needs would never last long in a place devoid of prey. But as this is an artificial environment, the station can feed or replace the deathworms as needed. It's a little convoluted, but it makes sense. Time to go over the facts. Like the island, this desert is a space station posing as a natural environment. It is inhabited by a large population of dangerous, genetically engineered creatures and a small population of humans that are struggling to survive. This whole environment is then deliberately contained by a combination of a holographic horizon and natural barriers. Assuming the other space stations are at all similar, then this whole thing is starting to look like some kind of bizarre experiment on a grand scale. Yes, each station would represent an experimental group, and I'll have to continue this later. One of the caravan scouts just returned in panic. Something about rocks being alive, which is of course ridiculous. I long for the days when I thought a Tyrannosaurus frolicking through the snow was the height of absurdity. Compared to yesterday, that seems commonplace. As the scout had so eloquently put, the rocks were indeed alive. Alive! In the shape of a massive bipedal golem and exceedingly angry. I was too shocked to scatter like the others when it charged, and for a moment, I was certain that I would die. Then something even more ludicrous happened. Lightning crashed into the golem, but it didn't come from the sky. It came from the mouth of a bloody dragon. I don't recall much else. Fear and instinct pretty much took over for the rest of the day, and while that helped me survive, I'm once again on my own. I remember now. The dragon had a...
Helena, eigentlich sollte dich ja eigentlich gar nichts mehr überraschen, weil immerhin hast du gegen einen Riesenaffen gekämpft, den es nicht wirklich gegeben hat, und du hast auch den Kopf eines riesigen Drachen gesehen. Also alles vorgelesen. Also müsstest du eigentlich auf nichts mehr gefasst sein.
A rider. Rather, the wyvern did. 2 legs. Means it's a wyvern. Struth. Listen to me. Fighting to survive and still finding time for semantics. The rider was covered up too well to get a good look at them. Could it have been Mei Yin? No. That's stupid. I don't even know if she's alive. Much less in this desert with me. It would be just like her though, to have tamed the meanest thing here so quickly. It's nice to pretend that a friend might be looking out for me at least. We were sort of mates, right? Sort of. I could really use one right now. A friend, I mean.
Sorry.
Eureka! At last,
Ich muss mich echt entschuldigen, aber anscheinend scheint es manche Leute nicht zu checken, dass ich gerade in einer Sitzung bin, obwohl ich es ihnen klar und deutlich erzählt habe. Ich sag's euch, man hat ein privates, man hat jetzt ein eigenes Zuhause und selbst dann hat man keine Ruhe.
I found signs of human life. This afternoon I came across a fresh series of footprints, some from humans, and some from what I assume are large beasts of burden. I cannot be sure who made them or how civilized they are, but neither can I afford to be too particular in my choice of saviors. Whoever they are, I must track them down immediately. As soon as I gather my strength, I shall pursue my quarry with the utmost haste and vigor. The tale of the brilliant and impeccably groomed Sir Edmund Rockwell shall not end this day. Salvation, thy name is Prophet's Rest. After a proper meal and some time out of the sun, the makeshift fortress doesn't look half as grand as its name might imply. Yet when I first sighted its walls from across the dunes, it may as well have been El Dorado itself. So grateful was I to find it. Thus far, I've seen little of the inhabitants, but they seem a hospitable sort. I've been given food, shelter, and even a wet cloth to clean myself with. Quite generous of them, considering how scarce water is in these lands. Their clothing is a curiosity, however. Those robes seem more ceremonial than functional. It seems that Prophet's Rest is less a fortress and more an enclave or monastery. I suppose that would explain the name now, wouldn't it? Yes, as strange as it may sound, the natives have created a primitive religion centered around the Ark's obelisks. They pray 3 times a day, each facing a different obelisk, and their robes bear a unique symbol, a 3-pointed star colored red, green, and blue. The blue obelisk appears to receive particular reverence due to its proximity. As charmingly ignorant as their superstitions may be, it's far from the most savage religion I've encountered. Besides, Prophet's Rest is in need of a doctor, and I am in need of supplies. I have discovered why Prophet's Rest is so generous with their water. The well at the edge of the compound is built directly on top of what the locals call a water vein, an endless supply of water that bubbles up from beneath the earth. Its existence is a minor miracle, though, compared to what I saw in the Starlit Sanctuary. Minor is the operative word. I suppose this ark must be floating among the stars just as the island was. What an extraordinary thought! I cannot fathom how such a thing is possible, but that remarkable metal must be at the heart of it. I'm certain.
So wie es aussieht, ist Rockwell wirklich besessen von diesem Metall, was er auf der Island gefunden hat. Mal schauen.
Most of my work as the monastery's doctor has been trivial. Every now and then, one of the guards gets injured by the local wildlife, but I usually find myself treating heat stroke and common illnesses. As such, I've had plenty of time to learn all the priests know about the obelisks. All told, they are stunningly ill-informed about the literal pillars of their faith. They are unaware that the obelisks are actually devices that can be activated, and needless to say, they have never activated one themselves. They showed a flicker of understanding when I described the artifacts on the island, however. I shall have to keep digging. Unbelievable! Have these idol-worshipping ninnies replaced all their common sense with blind devotion? Have years of oppressive heat completely addled their brains? I was finally allowed to see the monastery's inner sanctum, and lo and behold, there they were. Sitting upon an altar before a flock of prostrating primitives were 3 glowing artifacts, just like the ones I had found in the caverns beneath the island. Yet instead of making use of them, or even studying them, these half-wits are praying to them. The true value of those artifacts is completely lost on these simpletons. Sacred relics indeed. It took time, but I finally pilfered enough supplies and tools to survive on my own. Loading them onto these camel-like beasts of burden was laborious, but the real trial was absconding with the artifacts. There's always someone watching the inner sanctum, so I carefully studied the guard's shifts until I identified whose drink I had to spoil with my knockout serum. Even then, I acted with great haste and guile, for my heist will surely be discovered when the priests convene for their morning prayers. Alas, they will be too late. Sir Edmund Rockwell is always ahead of his foes, but not by a mere step, no. I am miles and miles beyond their reach.
Tja, Rockwell ist immer seinen Gegnern einen Schritt voraus.
Well, I found a new best mate. The little fuzzball isn't exactly what I meant, but I'll take her. I've dubbed her species Renapilla amplexus. They're small, cuddly little herbivores, and as far as I can tell, taming one has no practical use. I just couldn't let her starve to death though. I guess all this rubbish with golems and wyverns has quelched what was left of my scientific instinct to leave nature to nature. At least we provide each other with a little warmth at night, and her antics have helped to keep my spirits up. I suppose I'll need to give her a name. I may have been wrong about Renapilla not having a practical use. Earlier today, my furry new companion started bouncing around so excitedly that I couldn't calm her down. And then soon enough, it started raining. I brushed that off as a coincidence, but soon after filling my water skins and setting off once more, she started acting skittish. I decided to find shelter just in case, and within minutes, light rainfall had turned into an electrical storm. I'll need more evidence to draw any firm conclusions, of course, but I wouldn't mind having a fuzzy little weather radar with me. You know, it's a little on the nose, but radar's not a bad name. Thank goodness that I decided to find some high ground 2 days ago, or I'd have never spotted this settlement. That's twice now that I've stumbled into my own salvation. I can't count on that happening again. I'll need to stay here for a while and prepare before setting out once more. Fortunately, the villagers are willing to let me trade work for supplies and shelter. Another stroke of luck, and another factor I can't rely on. On the island, Rockwell's name got me far, but here, I'm just another stranger. Not everyone will trust or help me. I need to be prepared to survive on my own. In some ways, surviving on my own was less work. At least then I wasn't conscripted into manual labor. My whole body feels sore. I bet I wouldn't have to work if I were as adorable as Radar. The whole village is in love with her, I swear. They spoil her like a furry little princess. Rockwell would be livid about this arrangement. I can just hear him ranting about treating scholars with propriety. I hope the old Brit is doing well. Maybe when I've broken this mystery wide open, I'll figure out a way to get him off the island and we can discuss it all over tea like old times.
Tja, da brauchst du dich nicht mehr bemühen, ihn von der Insel zu holen, denn er befindet sich am selben Ort wie du.
It has been several days since I left Prophet's Rest, and I've seen no sign of pursuit. I am unsurprised. They probably assumed that I would make for the blue obelisk, as it was nearest. By setting out for the green obelisk instead, I already outwitted those simple-minded zealots. As I said, miles ahead. Miles! With those fools out of the way, I can slow my pace and take some time to properly study these so-called sacred relics of theirs. I'm curious to see if the materials they are made of bear any similarity to the metal in the starlit sanctuary. The obelisk is reacting to the presence of the artifacts with even more intensity than I expected. Each obelisk on the island required 8 artifacts to generate that sort of response, not 3. In other words, I may not need to do any spelunking before summoning whatever terrifying beast this ark has in store for me. Ah, the beast. Now that poses an entirely different conundrum. Even with my youth and my favourite pipe, I doubt that I could slay a monster such as that dragon Mr. Nerva fought. Not alone, anyway. I shall need to find a partner for this venture. But who?
Tja, ziemlich weise, Rockwell. Gut, dass du nicht das Portal, gut, dass du den Obelisk nicht aktiviert hast.
I've turned back north in the hope of making contact with some of the natives. It is a risk, as I cannot be sure how many bumbling savages are under the sway of that ludicrous obelisk-worshipping cult. But it is also the only region that I definitively know is occupied. I do not have much to offer in exchange for their aid, but I'm sure that I can negotiate an alliance with at least one of this ark's tribes. I was at the center of the island's diplomatic disputes for years, after all. Why, I am a seasoned, silver-tongued negotiator. Surely I can coax a partnership out of these primitive desert dwellers. What terrible misfortune. My keen sense of direction finally led me to a local settlement, but as it happened, I was not the first party to visit it that day. That honour belonged to the Burning Phoenix clan, a band of raiders that were plundering its storehouses and enslaving its surviving residents as I arrived. Naturally, the hoodlums fell upon me and stripped me of my valuables within minutes of my arrival. Ruffians. I managed to keep hold of my journal, but little else. This won't do, not at all. Then again, I was seeking out a tribe skilled in the art of violence. Perhaps I can turn this to my advantage. Curse these stubborn brutes. Despite a litany of polite, gentlemanly requests, they refuse to allow me to parley with their leader. Surely a leader of men is not half the imbecile that these barbarians are. I am positive that we could come to some sort of... Damn this noise! It's impossible to concentrate with all this insufferable whinging. Half of these prisoners won't stop moaning about one injury or another, and the other half are in constant hysterics. Very well. Perhaps if I tend to some of the wounded, it will dim this distracting cacophony. At last, I can hear myself think. The guards have moved me to a private cell, and while they have not divulged the reason for my transfer, I suspect that they took notice of my medical expertise. I caught them staring in my direction on several occasions as I worked. It seems that doctors are in high demand in these lands. I suppose that's no great surprise. The island was no different. No matter. While my skills in the realm of medicine are more in line with a field medic than a true physician, I shall continue to play the role as long as it serves me.
Tja, als Arzt kann man sich in einer rauen oder apokalyptischen Welt glücklich schätzen, weil dann hat man die höchsten Überlebenschancen. Weil eben, egal ob jetzt ein, ich weiß nicht, Warlord oder wie diese ganzen Kriegsherren heißen in der apokalyptischen Welt, immer von einem Arzt profitieren. Solange er seine Arbeit macht, natürlich.
While my mind still can't recall the last time I fired a gun, my muscle memory is much better. According to my would-be instructor, I wasn't a complete disaster on the firing range. I'm no pacifist. Death and violence are a part of life. That's just nature. Yet a gun still makes me feel a little uncomfortable. The idea of shooting at another human just seems instinctively wrong to me. I couldn't even fire at the new Legion back on the island. But I need to pull my weight. The villagers have been welcoming and patient with me. For their sakes, I need to practice. I may have to put my freshly polished marksmanship skills to the test sooner than I thought. A hunting party spotted a swarm of giant mantises heading in our direction. Yes, giant mantises. I haven't spotted them with my own eyes, but the villagers have spoken of them every now and again. They say the insects have these little hands that can actually grip and wield weapons or tools. Sounds absolutely loony, but so is the idea of a mantis swarm at all. They must share ghost mantises' distaste for cannibalism. No one seems keen on fighting them, but they're too close to outrun. Hopefully they'll just pass us by. My hopes that the mantises would ignore the village were unfounded, and I think we were all wondering if this morning's sunrise would be our last. Despite all my practice, my rifle felt heavy and foreign in my shaking hands as the swarm advanced. Fortunately, they weren't our only visitors. The villagers erupted in cheers as lightning and fire tore through the advancing insects from above. Some chanted a name, Wali al-Aswad. The rider, still hidden behind black robes, didn't acknowledge the ovation. With swift efficiency, their small flight of wyverns decimated the mantis swarm and made for the horizon. Wali al-Aswad. I need to meet this person, if only to thank them. Just who or what Wali al-Aswad is depends on who you ask. Some of the villagers have attached a religious connotation to the figure, believing it to be some sort of heavenly guardian who appears to the worthy in their time of need. One villager is even convinced Wali is an extraterrestrial. I don't deal in beliefs. I deal in empirical evidence, and that means nothing about Wali is certain until I can meet them. I won't forget this villager's kindness, especially after granting me a morellatops and supplies for my journey. But this is why I'm here, to find answers.
After days of travel, we finally arrived at the burning Phoenix clan's compound. And while my former peers were shuffled to the slave pens, I stood before the clan's leader. I had heard tales of the once great Tatar empires, though I'd never travelled to their lands. By all appearances, Timur is cut from the same cloth as their fabled Khans. He was at once imperious and casual, questioning me with impatience from a throne of hide and bone. Naturally, he was impressed by my intellect and gentlemanly demeanour. Granted, he did not say so aloud, but I was escorted to a small private chamber instead of a cell. Surely that says as much.
Tja, wie gesagt, als Arzt oder der, was sich mit Medizin auskennt, ist man in solchen rauen und apokalyptischen Welten, wird man behandelt wie ein Adeliger.
I had been pondering why Timur required the services of a doctor. He seemed to be in excellent health, and I'd seen no patients since I arrived. Well, now I shall ponder no longer. Timur has a wife, and she's with child. I suppose that even bloodthirsty raiders can fall in love, or at the very least, desire a family. The whole affair would be rather quaint were I not expected to care for the woman and deliver the child. Should either the child or the mother die during the birth, I fear that I will follow them in short order. Nazrin is quite different from her husband. She is a timid little flower of a woman, or rather, she would be if she were not many months pregnant. I am still undecided as to whether my timing is impeccable or unfortunate. A few weeks from now, Timur may have had no need of a doctor, but as it stands, I have been thrust into an unfamiliar scenario with scant time to prepare. Despite my unpleasant circumstances, this whole affair is rather intriguing. I never considered the possibility of new generations being born on the Ark, yet clearly, it was inevitable. Like any common animal, humans have the urge to procreate. How else could the species endure?
I'm definitely more prepared for this desert than before, and better equipped. With my Morellatops offering a large mobile supply of water and radar looking out for the weather, the only threat I really have to worry about is major predators. Also, giant golems. I'm actually impressed with the shape I'm in, if I do say so myself. I think I even saw some ab definition the other day. Took me long enough. I've been living without sweets for ages after all. You'd think I'd get fit much quicker. Great, now I miss sweets. The things I'd do to taste chocolate again.
Oh ja, Süßigkeiten.
It took weeks of searching, but I finally caught a glimpse of Wali al-Aswad. I knew I was getting close when I found a series of fulgurite formations this morning. And sure enough, I spotted several wyverns later in the afternoon with a lone rider among them. The rider clearly saw me too, but soon enough the wyverns were circling overhead. I waved and yelled in greeting, even calling out Mei Yin's name just in case. Yet without so much as a nod, the wyverns regrouped and flew off. Wali's not a social butterfly it seems, but I'm not letting them off the hook that easily. Of course, Wali lives on a bloody mountain. Of course they do. I saw their wyverns land at the summit yesterday, and they haven't left. This has to be their home. Unfortunately, the paths were too narrow for my Morellatops, so I had to leave it behind. It should know to wander off if I don't return for it. Not that I can really afford to worry about it. The climb's doing a fine job of kicking my ass even without distractions. I swear, if I don't have a six-pack after climbing a mountain in the bloody desert, I'm going to be awfully cross. I don't know what kind of reception I expected when I reached the summit, but laughter wasn't one of them. Yet that was exactly what I heard when I finally let myself collapse and started flinging every obscenity I could think of at this damn mountain. The bemused laughter of an old woman. Wali al-Aswad is definitely no guardian angel. She was quick to dismiss those particular rumors with remarks about how the gods have abandoned this wretched place. As long as I avoided that subject though, she's welcomed my questions with surprising warmth, though often enigmatically. I have a feeling that I'll need to be patient with her. It turns out I didn't find Wali al-Aswad. She found me. While the portal I used to get here opened with little fanfare on my end, apparently the other side created quite the spectacle. According to Wali, it was easy for her to spot from atop her wyvern, as she started tailing me soon afterwards. I guess her timely interventions were no coincidence. She didn't seem very surprised when I told her about the obelisks, their guardians, or even that this desert is actually a space station. Either she knows more than she's saying, or experience has grinded the surprise right out of her.
Rockwell, you old bean, you've done it again!
Ja. Und somit hat sie eine alte Frau gefunden, die uns irgendwie bekannt vorkommt.
Both mother and child made it through. Timur is a proud father, and your head is still attached to its shoulders. Why, I was even a guest of honor at Timur's celebratory feast. I cannot say I enjoyed the blood sport that serves as the Burning Phoenix's entertainment, but the food was delectable. I was also sure to seize upon Timur's momentary goodwill by filling his ears with whispers of obelisks, artifacts, and the untold power they grant to mortal men. It may take time for those thoughts to turn to action, but with constant care, I may yet turn him into my unwitting general. The silver tongue of Sir Edwin Rockwell has prevailed once again. After spending far too long watching the Burning Phoenix enslave and decimate hapless caravans and villages, I have convinced Timur to test his might against the guardian of the obelisk. I admit I am somewhat anxious. Timur is not the commander that Mr. Nerva was, and should he fall, I shall fall with him. Yet I have little choice, and the rewards of success are worth the risk. The obelisks, the starlit sanctuary, and that precious ore shall be the foundation of my legacy as a scientist, gentleman, and explorer. I am sure of it.
I really missed flying. There's no replicating the feeling, and no replacement for seeing a sunrise amongst the clouds. Wali probably started these wyvern riding sessions just to give herself an escape hatch when our conversations get too personal. But I can't say I mind. Despite their appearance, riding a wyvern is just as pleasant as riding an Argentavis, even without a saddle. By design, perhaps? No matter, genetically engineered or not, they are magnificent creatures. It's a risky proposition, but I absolutely must observe them in the wild sometime. I can't pass up an opportunity like that. Now that Wali has deemed my wyvern riding skills acceptable, she's finally agreed to show me around the region. From what I gather, Wali has been here for a very long time, maybe longer than Rockwell was on the island. She knows the history of every village and ruin. Apparently, there was once a great city to the southeast, but it was wiped out at some point. She's still mum on a lot of details, but I'll just have to keep prying. Radar's been helpful in that regard. Wali definitely seems to be in a better mood when the fuzzball's around. That little charmer's certainly earned her keep. I'm grateful that Wali allows me to study the local wildlife, but I suspect she only does so out of amusement. She always says something like, "Why do you spend so much time on these scribbles that no one will read?" I never have a good retort. It's true that no one else may ever read my dossiers, as I have no way to reproduce or distribute them as long as I'm trapped on one of these space stations. When I started them, they were a passion project, created out of my love for nature and its creatures. Now, I guess they're just part of my identity. Writing them helps remind me of who I am.
Tja, man kennt es. Viele ARC-Spieler lesen eben halt nicht die Notizen und verstehen auch nicht wirklich was die Story dahinter ist.
I really found it! Raw, untainted samples of that same mysterious ore from the sanctuary. That fearsome beast must have been guarding it. Thank the heavens for Timur and his berserk savagery. When he leapt from the back of his wyvern, I thought he was surely doomed. But the madman actually managed to grab hold of that monster's horns and turn its eyes into a bloody mess. I have never seen such brutally effective barbarism. Many of his bandits did not survive the encounter, of course, but that was to be expected. Progress requires sacrifice, and whether those brutes knew it or not, their deaths have helped humanity leap into the future.
Also wenn man den Manticore auch so erledigen könnte, wäre das schon ziemlich cool. Aber leider sieht die Realität etwas anders aus.
This ore is simply extraordinary. It is warm to the touch, even during these cold desert nights, and it pulses as though it has its own heartbeat. It is at once light and more sturdy than any natural material I have encountered. The uses one could find for such a substance. I shall have to name it at some point. What would do? Rockwellium? Edmundium? A dilemma for another time. For now, I have more pressing matters. Timur and his burning phoenix savages have played their part, and I cannot remain in their custody. It is time for the great warrior chief to receive his just reward. Alas, poor Timur. He was so focused on celebrating his victory over one foe that he never saw his greatest threat. Now he lies beneath the severed head of the beast he vanquished, eyes bulging and blood seeping from his open mouth. At least, that is how I imagine him. I did not stay to admire my handiwork. As soon as the first group of burning Phoenix warriors succumbed to their poisoned feast, I stole away into the night, Edmundium and artifact in tow. Serves those ruffians right, I say. They never did treat me the propriety that a gentleman and scholar of my caliber deserves. This desert is better off without them.
Und das ist der Moment, in dem Rockwell den Bösen verfallen ist. Also, er ist den Bösen verfallen worden, will ich mal sagen. Das ist der Moment, wo er in die dunkle Finsternis abgestürzt ist.
As my withdrawal from the burning Phoenix's camp demanded haste, I did not have time to double-check my supplies. It appears that I shall have to do some hunting. No matter. I may not be as spry as I was when I felled a charging rhino on the plains of the Serengeti, but with all the small armory I managed to abscond with, I can surely manage. I'd planned on trading those weapons for information as soon as I encountered a peaceful tribe, but I can spare a few rounds of ammunition. Despite my limited equipment, I have managed to run some initial tests on the Edmundium. Based on my observations, a typical forge may not be enough to smelt a sample of Edmundium ore into any sort of usable ingot. I suspect that it has extremely strong metallic bonds, and therefore a much higher melting point than any conventional metallic element. I must find a proper base of operations where I can run more extensive experiments. I mustn't be overeager, however. I have limited supplies and... Drat! I shall have to ruminate on this later. A sandstorm may be brewing, and I have no desire to be caught in it. Confounded weather! Not only did that sandstorm separate me from my steed, but when it cleared, I was beset upon by none other than the traitorous Miss Walker herself. Oh, she put on quite the act, spouting all sorts of nonsense about how good it was to see me. Rubbish! I see right through her ruse. I am certain that she is after my Edmundium. The only reason she has not simply looted it from my corpse is that she requires my superior intellect to understand it. Well, two can play at this game, Miss Walker. I can fill the role of the benign old scientist for a time, but I shall not be betrayed again.
I can't believe it! Wiley spotted someone wandering in the desert the other day, and it turned out to be none other than Edmund Rockwell. I just about burst into tears when I recognized him. Apparently, he heard that Nerva was holding me captive and sought to negotiate my release. That led him to the cave, and eventually he wound up here. Awfully sweet of him to go through all that trouble for my sake. Strangely, Wiley claims that she saw a portal open up far away from her territory shortly before mine did. I guess that was Rockwell's, though Wiley arrived at the scene too late to track him. Rockwell theorized that the portals may have taken us through time as well as space. Considering my present company, I'm inclined to agree with him. Wally has been much quiet.
Tja, Rockwell war nicht sehr begeistert. Naja, das lag auch daran, dass er in Glauben war, dass Helena ihn seine Arbeit wegnehmen wollte, als sie zuerst einen der anderen Obelisken mit Meyin durchsucht hatte und gegen den Riesenaffen gekämpft hat. So fing schon die Eifersucht an.
Since we found Rockwell. I guess she's just letting us catch up. However, she did say something interesting when we were recounting Nova's ambitions for the island. This place would never allow anyone to master it, she said, and when I asked her to explain, she told me that the great city to the southeast was destroyed by the obelisk itself. Now it's just conjecture, but it's interesting to think about. Could the curators of these stations be monitoring human behavior and clipping its wings? Should the survivors ever band together and fly too close to the sun? If each station represents a different group in a larger experiment, resetting human progress would make a lot of sense. It's a bit grim though, isn't it? Yikes.
I am glad that I possessed the foresight to hide my presence from Miss Walker after her capture on the island. She clearly believes that I never learned of her betrayal. By cunningly taking advantage of this fact, I have managed to completely deceive the deceiver. The grim old bat she travels with is another matter. I often catch her glaring in my direction, her eyes sharp and mistrusting. If I could, I would deal with her as I dealt with Timur, but I fear she is far too observant. For now, I must maintain my deception as best I can.
I don't think Rockwell's been sleeping much. I awoke last night to find him studying a strange piece of metal by firelight. I guess some tribe gave it to him as a gift, along with a very familiar looking artifact. I insisted that we show those items to Wally, and she recognized them as the property of this station's lone guardian. With all that she knows, I'm not surprised she's activated the obelisks before. Hell, it sounds like the old battle axe has even slain the beast herself. Since we have said Guardian's artifact, Wally says that we can leave this station at any time. I suppose we may as well. Rockwell's eager to depart, and as much as I like Wally, I've had my fill of sand.
I may have given Miss Walker too much credit. Although I carelessly allowed her to catch sight of my Edmundium ore samples, she was more interested in the artifact I possess. I should have realized this sooner. Miss Walker's specialty is biology. She would not recognize the unique properties of Edmundium if they hit her square in the forehead. That fact has eased some of my tension. Even if Miss Walker seeks to take advantage of my genius, she is focusing on the wrong discoveries. So long as I am careful in my studies of Edmundium, I shall remain miles ahead of her.
The transporter that can take us back.
Also, das, was wir als Element kennen, nennt Rockwell Edmundium. Also, wie sein Name, Edmund. Edmundium.
Back to the control center station is in the ruins of another city, south of the mountains. Wally believes that it was destroyed by the obelisk, just like the city in the southeast. I didn't press her for details. Not that I'd have gotten any. Wally's more tight-lipped about those ruins than anything. I had to practically beg her to take me to the southeastern city, and while we were there, she spent most of her time just gazing out into the distance. No sense in bringing her mood down with that rubbish now. After all that she's done for me, I'd like to give her a nice, proper farewell.
I cannot wait to be rid of that glowering menace of a woman, this so-called Wali al-Aswad. I suspect the feeling is mutual. She has offered little in the way of farewells while seeing us to this ark's entrance to the starlit sanctuary. Things will be much easier once Miss Walker and I have parted ways with the Desert Witch, I suspect. Miss Walker is thoroughly oblivious to both the wonders of Edmundium and my knowledge of her underhanded scheming back on the island. She can continue to fiddle with trinkets and relics. I may even assist her if it suits me. Meanwhile, I shall unlock the secrets of the most extraordinary element in the universe, right under her nose. Regards, Sir Edmund Rockwell.
Having seen us through the ruins and safely to the platform, Wally has taken her leave. After doing so much for me, I was sad to see her go, but at least I got her to smile before she left. Well, me and Radar. I can't very well take the little critter with me, so I officially gave Wally ownership of her. They'll be good for each other, I think. Gah, I wrote Wally up there. Twice. I suppose old habits die hard, but it's not really her name, is it? I always knew that was the case, but she'd never told me to call her anything else. At least, not until now. Well, at any rate, cheers, Raya. It was a pleasure to have known you.
Überraschung. Die alte Frau hat sich als Raya herausgestellt, die seit Jahren in dieser Wüste wohnt und die Leute beschützt mit den Wüvern, mit ihren Wüvern.
I have seen so much since we last spoke, John. There are secrets in this desert that you would never believe. Dangers that would have paralyzed me with fear when we first met. But I am a different woman now. Would you recognize me still behind this black veil? I still find ways to help people, though not as I used to. I am no shepherd to the lost, no healer of wounded souls. Sometimes, I simply defend the defenseless, or guide those few who seek the truth behind this cursed place. Perhaps one day, someone will find that truth, strike down the false gods of this land, and at last grant me rest. Yet until that day comes, know that I will not falter. Know that I will carry on. Yours, always, Raya.
Beim letzten Mal habe ich glaube ich, den Fehler gemacht, dass ich beim anderen Video nicht die Credits abspielen habe lassen. Aber man hätte wahrscheinlich die Vorschau gesehen von Scorched. Created by NeddyTheNoodle.
Where have I been taken?
So da, das war's. Mal kurz So, das war's mit unserer heutigen Folge von Ark, die Geschichte von Ark, Scorched Earth. Wir sehen uns bei The Center wieder. Und dann auf Aberration. Ich bedanke mich fürs Zusehen. Wir sehen uns wieder. Und tschüss.